Hey grappling fans, Silverfox here for the grapplingreferee.com with a video analysis I've been meaning to do between JT Torres and Lepri from the 2016 Worlds. This was a match I've actually had more than a few people ask me about. Why did it happen? Why did Lucas win? So I wanted to finally get to doing an analysis of it. A couple things to think about related to this match. The first is that this is a great matchup between these two guys. They fought several times before, so you know it's going to be exciting. But that being said, it was not a particularly exciting match. In fact, the only scoring throughout the match was related specifically to a series of stalling penalties, and we've seen this happen before. We're very evenly matched guys in a hyper-competitive situation are not as aggressive or want to yield in any way that gives an advantage to their opponent, and a lot of times that results in passivity. Now, the way it works for the Federation is you get a series of 4 penalties, and they're progressive in terms of their detriment. So the first penalty would be considered a warning. The second penalty would be a warning that results in an advantage given to your opponent. The third penalty would be considered a warning that results in 2 points given to your opponent. And then the fourth would ultimately result in your disqualification. Now, particularly for passivity or stalling, these can happen simultaneously. And as in this case, both competitors are stalling at the same time, so they're both receiving stalling calls. So ultimately, we're going to watch as they progress through a series of 3 stalling calls, resulting in 2 points each, 1 advantage each, 3 penalties for both. And that's the way the match goes till almost the last 10 seconds of the match. And we'll look at the details behind that. A couple other things worth highlighting is this is a semifinals match at the Worlds. So the Federation employs a 3-referee system. And just as a quick overview, a 3-referee system has a center referee and 2 corner referees. The 2 corner referees are serving as a double check mechanism that the center ref is doing things correctly. If they don't feel that something has been issued or something that was issued needs to be corrected, they will stand up and give an alternate gesture or signal for what the score should be. If there is a majority, meaning the 2 outside refs feel differently than the center ref, they can actually overrule him. This also comes into play should there be a referee's decision at the end. It's a majority decision amongst the 3 referees. Now, something else to consider here is that the Federation is actually employing video replay as well. So there's a set of head referees sitting at a table. They're watching it on video, and at any given point, they can actually re-roll the tape and watch it maybe from a different angle than the referee saw or what have you. And then you'll notice the center ref is wearing an earpiece. He's actually getting information from that head referee table. So there's a lot of double checking mechanisms that are built into this particular match, and just the Federation tournaments at the semifinals and above level already with the 3-ref system and the video replay. So they're making an honest effort to make sure that the calls are correct. But as we know, because humans are involved, that is not necessarily the case. And my opinion on this particular match, I hope will shed some different perspective than the way the Federation saw it on this particular day. Now, ultimately, Lucas goes on to win by an advantage in a last-minute attempted sweep. And we'll look at the details, and really, it's on such a borderline that, I hope everyone that's watching will help me make the call. So let's take a look at some footage. Okay, let's look at the first penalty. The referee's checking his watch. The corner ref is already standing up, signaling stalling. He moves them to their respective sides, points to the competitor, issues a stalling penalty for each. Okay, second penalty. Same business. Puts them on the respective side, but this time issues an advantage, penalty, advantage, and then action continues. All right, third and final penalty. Referee looking closely. Again, guys just pretty much stand up the whole time. Very static grips. Stops them. Points. Penalty, 2 points. He's going to do the same thing for JT. Penalty, 2 points. He's going to resume the match. The match is now tied across the board with just penalties. 2 points to 2. 1 advantage to 1 advantage. 3 penalties each. They're each facing disqualification. All right, so Lepri's been on bottom. He's playing a single leg X-guard game. He grabs a single leg. He stands up connected from the guard. And now he puts JT down. But if we look closely, we can clearly see that JT does not go down to anything but his knee and his hand. And I don't care whether it's a takedown or a sweep. You got to put somebody on their hip, on their rear, and on their back to even be considered, the start of a completion of that kind of technique. So I don't see how taking him down to the knee could have been considered an advantage as was awarded. Now here's another angle. Again, very clearly, his knee and his hand, his hip, his rear, his back never touches the mat. And this, I think, is a serious issue and the mistake at hand. Now here is what it would look like if you were to finish an attempted sweep. He's clearly sitting on his hip. That looks way different than this. So I'm using some cool editing software there to kind of isolate and show the difference in certain spots there, certain camera angles. And from what I see, being an armchair referee here, I think it was a mistake. I don't think that particular call was advantage worthy because JT again was able to go down to his knee and his hand and not actually touch his hip to the floor and not give up a top to then bottom position. So that being said, look at the challenge here if it is a mistake, and I like to break it into two components when we talk about an error. We talk about the severity of it and we talk about the impact of it. So how severe was it? Well, the call was certainly borderline. We had at least 3 referees watching it. We had others at the table confirming it. They all felt good about the call. So it's a borderline call that I would even differentiate from to begin with. Secondly, the impact part, though, is the huge part. Here this was a 10-minute match, really not a lot of action. And then within 10 seconds of the end of the match, just when you think you could relax because it's over, bam, something happens. You have to make an instantaneous call, and it decides the entire, who's going to advance to the finals or not. So this is kind of the, also illustrates the referee's quandary. You're smooth sailing for 10 minutes, not a lot's happening, and then bam, all of a sudden you get hit with this super important call that makes all the difference. Here's something I'd like to clarify, though, in conclusion, is whether this was an attempted sweep advantage or an attempted takedown advantage. From my perspective, because Lepri comes up from the guard, the fact that they stand up attached is irrelevant. It's irrelevant that they're in a takedown position. If he puts JT on the ground, he has swept him. He was on the bottom. He came up, and then he turned him over, and that would have been a sweep. And if he put him on the ground for a moment correctly, and I'm indicating put him on his hip correctly, that would have been a sweep. So you may say, well, who really cares whether you call it a takedown or you call it a sweep? Well, here's what's important. If I call it a takedown, that means that when Lepri stands up with the single leg, if JT takes him down, now he gets a takedown. Now that changes the whole dynamic. I look at it from the sweep perspective that if Lepri comes up holding the leg into a single and gets returned back to the ground, he's just been put back in his guard again. So this is a really important distinction between a sweep and a takedown. And I think one of the most misunderstood and misapplied scoring issues in officiating and in understanding in grappling is this coming up from the guard into a standing position and being either returned back down the same way or resulting in putting the opponent down, what it's called. Now, the reason a lot of times it's glossed over is because, well, a takedown is 2 points and a sweep is 2 points. So if there's a score, hey, it's 2 points, it's irrelevant what you call it. But that returning the person back down to where they started is what really is critical in that. So let me throw one more thing in for a final thought. Let's say that this mistake is not made and that it is not given an advantage and the match ends. My opinion is this goes to a referee's decision, and all referees would conclude that from that episode of Lepri coming up on the sweep and almost having an advantage-worthy attempt at the sweep would still be enough for him to win the match from a referee's decision. There was really so little other activity that went throughout the match, obviously as indicated with all the stalling calls, that there wasn't a lot to draw on, and actually that might have been one of the only action sequences that they had to use for any consideration, and it happened at the very end of the match, so it's obviously the most fresh in their mind. So I think that although this was a mistake, I don't think it would have had an impact to the outcome, even if it wasn't scored this way. So unfortunately, I think JT loses this match either way. So I hope you enjoyed this particular match analysis, and if there's any questions, give me a holler. I'd love to discuss this further. Otherwise, until next time, this is Silverfox for the GrapplingReferee.com. Thanks.